it! Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday, you said tomorrow. So just do it! Make your dreams come true! Just do it!
Welcome to Successful Dropout. This podcast is for the outliers, the innovators, the rebels, those that dare to dream and act on their dreams. I'm your host, Kylan Ginger. Join me as we find out what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. This episode is brought to you by Praxis. Guys, if you've been listening for a while and you're inspired to drop out, grind, and succeed and to start turning your dreams into reality, Praxis helps you go from student to startup in just 9 months, okay? To land your dream job or to start your own company, you don't need to sit in more classrooms or blast out resumes or go through years of training. You can start today. Praxis combines a 3-month professional bootcamp with a 6-month paid apprenticeship at a startup that leads directly to a full-time job. And startups aren't just for coders, by the way. There's sales positions, marketing, operations. Even if you're not sure what you're interested in, Praxis places you with a growing, dynamic company where you get paid to do work you love to do, where you get to become part of a team, and where you learn how to create value. It's not just an internship, it's real work. In addition to the apprenticeship, you complete an intensive education program that combines professional development training, skill building projects, and one-on-one coaching. You'll leave the program with a full-time job offer and the skills and experiences you'll need to work for any company that you want to work for or to even start your own company. No degree is required to get started on your career, guys. Whether you're an ambitious go-getter right out of high school, a creative thinker who's bored in college, or a college grad looking forward to something better than more school or a cubicle job, Praxis is a phenomenal resource for you. $50,000. Okay, $50,000 is the average salary that Praxis graduates are getting with these full-time jobs that they get right after the program in less than a year. If you want to learn more, go to discoverpraxis.com, discoverpraxis.com, and let them know that you found out about them through Successful Dropout and start turning your dreams into reality, guys. And with that being said, let's get to the show. What is up, Successful Dropouts? Get stoked because today on the show we have Troy Dean. Troy is an online marketing speaker, coach, consultant, and podcaster. He specializes in helping businesses and entrepreneurs use the internet to attract new customers and build their communities. Some notable things he's accomplished: he managed the online strategy for Jessica Watson, the 16-year-old Australian girl who sailed around the world. He helped FebFast, an Australian-based health challenge program, raise over $1 million in 2011 and 2012. And he's also a professional voiceover artist, which I'm sure you'll be able to tell right away. And he's voiced campaigns for hundreds of brands, including Ford, Telstra, ANZ, Hungry Jacks, Mitsubishi, and more. His current project is called Rockstar Empires, which is a course on how to create your own course and sell it online. So, Troy, that's the intro I have for you, man, but tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Thanks, man. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. And next time I'll be sure to give you a shorter intro because that was a mouthful.
No, it's all good. You've accomplished a lot, man.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. Yeah, I mean, I guess I come from the northern suburbs of Adelaide, come from a pretty modest sort of background, and discovered the internet. And I remember, you know, not to sort of jump ahead too much, but I remember the first day I made $1 while I was sleeping online. Actually, it was $24 while I was sleeping. And I woke up the next morning. I'm like, man, I've seen the light. This is the way to leverage your life, is to create revenue online. And that was about 8 years ago, and it's been foot on the pedal ever since, and it's been an amazing ride.
Yeah, that's a magical moment. Tell me a little bit just about your personal life.
Sure. So I dropped out of uni when I was about, how old was I then? About 20. I was living in Adelaide. I was playing in bands, and I was kind of like, I don't know, most 20-year-olds, man, I was pretty lost. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. What I really wanted to do was be a performer. When I was a kid growing up, all I wanted to do was be an actor. And then when I got into my teens, I realized that being a musician meant that you basically, the journey between doing something and getting the reward was a lot quicker if you were a musician than an actor. Because if you're an actor, you'd have to like spend months doing rehearsals, and then you'd do a show, and then maybe the girls would come talk to you after opening night, right? Whereas if you can play an instrument, you know, you can literally stand up in front of people, play a song, and within like 5 minutes have girls come talk to you, right? So as a teenager, I was like, right, I want to play music, because, you know, that basically girls are interested in you if you play music. Right. And so then I went to uni. I started doing a Bachelor of Educational Theatre. I was going to I got the worst career advice ever when I went to school. I was told that I could go to university and all I wanted to do was be an actor. And of course, all my careers guidance counselors were like, no, you need something to fall back on. I mean, I'm sure we've all heard that, right? You need something to fall back on. Why do you need something to fall back on? Here's an idea. Why not just go hard on your dreams? I mean, I was like 18 at the time. The advice should have been spend the next 5 years of your life just pursuing that dream and go hard and travel and live it and experience it and all the best. And if I can do anything to help, I'm here to help, you know. But instead it was like, no, you need something to fall back on. So what you should do is go to university and learn to become a drama teacher. And that was just horrible. So, you know, I eventually dropped out of uni and moved to Melbourne, which is where the music scene kind of here is in Australia. Of course, after a couple of years, the band that I was in kind of imploded, and then I was kind of wandering around the planet, just kind of, you know, well, actually Melbourne, just going, what am I doing with my life? I have no idea what I'm doing, and you know, and then I found a guy, lived in a block of flats with a guy who worked at a radio station, and he introduced me to some people. We were chatting in the car park one night, and he said, what do you do with your voice? And I said, I'm a singer. And he said, you should do voiceovers. And I didn't even know what voiceovers were. And he introduced me to a couple of people at a radio station, and I started doing voiceovers, which was great, because voiceovers in Australia give you it's good work if you can get it, because if you can get consistent enough work, you can earn good money in a really short space of time. Now, you also might go 3 or 4 weeks without a job, which can be pretty scary. But if you can pick up 2 or 3 jobs a week, you know, that's enough to kind of survive and pay the bills. And then, so I had all this time on my hands, and I had enough money to survive. And that's when I really discovered the internet and started to figure out that all the computers in the world were slowly getting connected, and I could start to use that to build something.
Absolutely. And the voiceover thing, man, I just got to say, your voice, I told you earlier, but again, it's like hot chocolate in my ears, man. I don't know how else to describe it. You could say just about anything, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, fabulous. I think we were talking pre-show that I was talking to our Facebook girl the other day who runs our Facebook ads, and I've been doing lots of live streaming on Facebook, and I said to her the other day, I said, I'm starting to get self-conscious that maybe people think I'm, you know, in Australia there's this real kind of tall poppy syndrome, and if you put yourself out there too much, people, you know, tend to think you're a bit of a wanker. And I said to my Facebook girl, I said, I don't want to come across as being one of those self-indulgent, self-righteous Facebook live streamers, you know. And she said, well, you know, with all due respect, your voice is so good that you could say anything and people would want to listen to you. And I was like, no, it's about the content, not the quality of my voice. Listen to what I'm saying.
Oh gosh. Oh man. Okay, Troy, I want to let's slow the story down. I want to go back to the moment you dropped out, and tell us specifically that story, the exact moment when you dropped out, and why you decided to make that decision.
It's a funny story, man. I was studying Bachelor of Educational Theatre, and one of the subjects we were doing was called Foundations of Modern Drama. And so it was supposed to be like a practical, kind of a semi-practical, semi-theoretical subject on, you know, modern drama. Right. And so we would read texts, we would analyze them, we'd read Chekhov and Ibsen, and then we would analyze them, and then we would do workshops in the space and start to bring these texts to life and really understand the foundations of modern drama. Anyway, and I remember the lecture was a Tuesday afternoon, or actually the workshop was a Tuesday afternoon at 4:00, and our regular teacher was sick. He couldn't make it. And so we're, you know, at this stage, we're a bunch of young adults. We're all like 18, 19, 20 years old. Right. And The university made this decision to bring in a relief teacher from out of town, from a little country town called Murray Bridge, and she was basically she was a primary school teacher, and so after primary school she drove up to Adelaide to take this relieve this class of Foundation Modern Drama for a bunch of university students. What I think the university should have done at that stage was consulted with us and just said, hey, look, your teacher's sick. We'll just reschedule this for later in the week. Or, what do you guys want to do? But instead, they felt like they had to provide us with a teacher. So they brought in this relief teacher. And this poor woman was obviously given the wrong brief because she had us miming getting in and out of car doors, which is what you do it's like what you do in year 6 drama. And I was just really insulted by I was sitting there going, really? I've got a student loan for this, and right. This is just really insulting. And I was chewing gum at the time in the class. I wasn't blowing bubbles or anything. I was just chewing gum. And she looked at me before our group was our turn to get up and mime getting into cars. She looked at me and she said, "Oh, can you lose the gum, please?" And I looked at her and I said, "Pardon?" And she said, "Oh, can you lose the chewing gum?" And that was the moment that I snapped. It was a series of events that had shown blatant disregard for our education. And I said to her, no, actually, I'm keeping the gum. And I picked up my books. Put them in my bag, put my bag over my shoulder, and I walked out of the class and I walked off campus and I never went back.
Oh, my gosh.
Because I realised in that moment that the university as an institute didn't actually care about student outcomes. All they cared about was student enrolments, because that's how they got their funding. That's what they were paid on. They weren't paid on graduates. They were paid on enrolments. And it was that one act of disregard and disrespect for our education that made me realise I'm wasting my time at this institute. This is actually I'm not furthering my life here. I'm actually wasting time. So, I went home.
Man, yeah, that's such a great point. I was just talking with Isaac Morehouse, who's kind of a thought leader on the subject here in the U.S., and he was talking about just the system right now where you have kind of third-party funders, funding a university, and these teachers teaching these students, and there's no incentive for these teachers to make sure their students succeed. It's all about the numbers, and did we get through the course material, and did you get that letter on your piece of paper? Versus a model where there's some really cool models starting to spring up here. One's called Make School, where however successful the student is, that's how successful the school is. And the student pays the school back out of their earnings that they generate after they graduate. And so if they graduate, get a crappy job, or don't make it as an entrepreneur, specifically they're focused on building and selling apps, the school just doesn't get paid. And so the incentive to make sure your student succeeds is huge at a model like that, but not so in this traditional system we have there. So fantastic point. Now, Troy, how did your friends and especially your family react when you dropped out?
Well, frankly, I don't think they were that surprised, man. In fact, I think most of my friends and family were surprised when I actually went to university in the first place. So I think they were relieved when I went to university, because it was like, oh, okay, we don't have to worry about him for the next 3 years. He's kind of taken care of. But the truth is, I was only there for 8 months, and I dropped out. I don't think they were that. I think I've always kind of been the one in the family. Like, I've always walked to the beat of my own drum, and always been really individual and not done anything just because society expects me to do that. I think my mum, my parents broke up when I was about 12 years old, so I think my mum and I lived with my mum and my stepdad. She remarried, and I think my mum and my stepdad were a little bit worried about me, just kind of worried about what I was going to do with my life. And mum was like, well, if you're not going to uni now, you have to get a job. And I was playing in bands at the time, and I was really in no rush to get a job as such. I liked earning money, but I knew that I hadn't found myself yet, and I knew that it was kind of an exploration, and it was going to take me a little while to figure it out. And not long after dropping out of university, I moved over to Melbourne anyway to sort of pursue my creative endeavours. So it wasn't like, my brother, he actually dropped out of university first year. He eventually went back and became a CPA, but he was studying economics in his first year, and then he was going to transition to law. And after the first year, he dropped out, and that was a big surprise because he's always been a very studious lad,
right,
and very academic, and so that was a big surprise. But he, as I said, he eventually went back and got his degree anyway.
I see. Now, for any of our listeners whose parents or friends don't support them, they're getting a lot of flack for this decision, because that's very common, and it's important to take note of that. So for anybody like that, what advice would you have for them?
Well, the thing is, I mean, I've actually taught at private colleges here in Melbourne as well. And one of the problems, I think with traditional education is that the job, the career that you want, or the career that you'll end up with, they're not even teaching at university now because it doesn't exist. Technology is changing so quickly. And what they are teaching you now is probably not going to be relevant in 3 years' time anyway. Especially if you're interested in being an entrepreneur, especially if you're interested in, to be an, I mean, sure, you can go and do an MBA or you can do any kind of business degree, but you get out in the real world and you start building a business, particularly an online business where things move so quickly. And it's really hard to learn this stuff because everyone's journey is different. I don't think for me anyway, I don't think having a piece of paper is as important as actually getting in the trenches and rolling your sleeves up and getting your hands dirty and getting some on the job real world experience. Yeah. So, I think it's really, so here's the thing. Yesterday I was talking to a colleague of mine who was quoting me Arnold Schwarzenegger's 5 rules of success. And I think rule number 3 is like work out your passion, think big, and ignore the naysayers is rule number 3. I can't remember the last 2, unfortunately. But rule number 3, ignore the naysayers. Like, surround yourself with people who support you, and if friends and some friends and family are giving you a hard time, then that's their stuff. It's actually not. It's actually got nothing to do with you. If a family member's disappointed that you've dropped out of university, it's actually their thing that they need to sort out. It's actually got nothing to do with you. So just give that back to them, and in the meantime, surround yourself with people who support you and constantly give you positivity, because that's really important.
What was a fear that you had dropping out? Kind of the biggest fear, and how did you manage that?
Well, I guess the fear was I didn't know, like. So if you're at university or college, even if you're not enjoying it, at least you're on a path somewhere, right? Even if you know that it's going to end up somewhere where you don't want to be, well, at least it's a path. I mean, it's like
tried and true.
Right, exactly. It's like I can walk on this dirt path in the woods. I'm not sure where it's going to end up, but at least I've got a path to follow. Whereas if you just get off that path and walk into the middle of a paddock, that's really scary, because now all of a sudden I'm in uncharted waters. I'm walking somewhere where there is no trodden path. I don't know where to turn. I don't know which way to go. Yeah. How did I manage it? Well, I was playing in bands at the time, and I was very, I had a very active social life, so I was kind of out a lot, drinking and flirting and playing gigs and, all that all that kind of good stuff you do. And I think I also just kind of somehow knew that I was young, and I didn't have to figure it out right now. I've got plenty of time, and I was only like 19 when I dropped out. So I'm like, whatever. Like, I don't need to be making any life-changing decisions right now. I'm young. I've got plenty of time to figure it out. So I think I just gave myself some time to figure stuff out.
Yeah, and that's such a key thing is I see this too often at a young age, like 18, 19. You're already so worried about getting a degree, figuring your life out, getting that job that pays all right, that you're going to work for 40 years and then retire eventually. And the reality is you have so much time. You can take a couple of years off and go explore the world of possibilities. And your fallback plan can just be coming back and picking right up where you left off on your degree. And so that's a great point. And to kind of transition out of that, I want to know what you did the first several months after dropping out. I mean, you mentioned that you were probably just partying and playing a lot. And if that was the case, do you wish you would have done anything differently? Because I think that's such a question. Like you said, when you drop out, like you've kind of burned that ship for the time being, and now you're in the real world. You got to make something happen. Yeah,
it's a great question, and I'm a little bit older now, man, so I can reflect on. And it's funny, as you get older, the more you do sort of reflect on decisions you've made in the past. And what I have learned is that everyone's journey is their own journey, and so I have no regrets. But if I could talk to my younger self, what I did when I first dropped out of uni is I just went and worked a bunch of crummy jobs just to, get some money. I was selling advertising space in magazines and in street mags and music papers and telemarketing and just a whole bunch of stuff that was just horrible, basically. But what I would have done if I had my time again is I would have traveled, man. I would have just gone and seen the world and figured out a way to, pay the bills along the way. I didn't travel. I didn't leave the country until I was in my mid-30s. I went to Thailand for a couple of weeks. It was the first time I left Australia, and I've I've been out of the country a bunch of times now. I've been all around Europe. I've been across the States. I've been, done Thailand and Indonesia. And
what's your favorite state here in the U.S.?
Oh, man, I was about a month ago, I was in Manhattan for the first time, and that blew my mind. I love Manhattan, man. It's incredible. I'm going back for sure. It's off the charts, dude. It's nuts.
Cool. Okay, okay, so you started traveling, or you wish you would have traveled more.
Yeah, so that would be my, if anyone is I really don't want to be here at university and I want to go, I'm not sure what I want to do, my advice would be go and see the world because it's really easy to get stuck in your own little bubble and to think that the city that you live in is the entire world and this is what it's all about. Man, there is just so much crazy stuff going on in the world and there are so many amazing people doing amazing things. Just go and get inspired, There's this analogy that my colleagues and I always talk about, as an entrepreneur, you're constantly giving to your business, to your customers, to your colleagues, to your staff. You're constantly putting stuff out. This is a podcaster, right? You're constantly producing things for the world. And I kind of liken it to a chef. A chef is constantly preparing meals for people, but occasionally the chef has to go and restock the ice chest with ingredients that they can use in their meals. So I think as creative entrepreneurs, we also need to go and restock our ice chest. And if that means going and seeing some live theatre or some live music or going and seeing a great film or, spending a whole weekend watching the Star Wars trilogy or travelling or going to museums or art galleries, whatever it is, you need to get out into the real world and continue to be inspired so that you can continue to produce for your community. And if I had my time again, I would have dropped out of university and I would have just started traveling, I think, for sure.
Man, I love that point. I love that analogy of the chef and kind of restocking the kitchen. That's great.
Yeah.
Now, Troy, moving more into your entrepreneurial journey, so you dropped out and you were doing the band thing, you wish you would have traveled more and stuff. At what point did you start thinking more entrepreneurially and kind of get into your first venture, and what was that?
Yeah, good question. So I started doing voiceovers and had a little bit of time on my hands, and then I figured out the web, and because I had time on my hands, I just figured out how to make websites. And the first website I figured out how to make was to promote. I'm
curious, before you continue, how much do you make doing a voiceover? What's that like?
So it depends on the job. But let me give you an example here in Australia, right? If I do what's called a short-term radio job, local, which means it's only going to be played in Melbourne and it's only going to be played for a maximum of 3 months on radio stations. So this would be common for if someone's having a sale for a period of time, or if there's a particular event on that's only running for a short period of time. So a 3-month radio job, I'll walk into a radio station, I'll voice the job, I'll be in there for maybe half an hour maximum. And I think that job at the moment is worth about $310. I think that's the current card rate for a short-term radio job. So it's on air for 3 months just in Melbourne. Now, if you do a 12-month national television ad just for one 30-second commercial that is played all around the country for up to 12 months, I think that's worth about $850. And again, that could take you anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour to actually voice that job. And they'll just keep reusing it for the next 12 months and you get paid $800 for that job. So out of that, of course, you've got to pay your commission for your agent, you've got to pay a bit of tax, but you can see very quickly, if you do 2 jobs a week, well, you kind of got the rent and your food covered, and then you can spend the rest of your time, working on what it is you want to work on.
Yeah, interesting. I just never had really much insight into that industry.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. There are many people in Australia that just do voiceovers full time. I mean, they do pretty well. I mean, for me, it just I had time on my hands, and I was just I wanted to do other things. It's not going to consume your life
Right.
9 to 5. Doing voiceovers, and it's also very unreliable work. As I said, you could go 3 or 4 weeks without a job, and that can get pretty hairy sometimes. So in the meantime, I'd figured out how to build websites to promote myself as a voiceover artist. Yeah, those lovely websites in Flash that we were making back in the late 90s, whenever it was, and then I was also playing gigs around town and building websites to promote myself as a musician. And then what happened, of course, is, someone sees that I build a website and they're like, oh, I like your website that you built. Do you build websites? And I'm like, well, not really, but I'll build one for you if you want me to, because I wanted to practice. I wanted a project to work on. So I built a bunch of websites for friends who work in the film industry here in Melbourne, and who I just knew from doing voiceovers, and I built them a bunch of websites. And then eventually someone said to me, I want to pay you to build me a proper website. And I was offended. I was like, dude, I built you a proper website 12 months ago. What's wrong with it? And he's like, no. I want you to pay me. I want to pay you to build me a proper website. And I'm like, okay, well, I better go and learn how to build a proper website then, which basically meant not in Flash, right?
Yeah.
And a website that search engines could, read and all that kind of stuff. So I started building websites, and then very quickly ended up in a partnership with a guy, and we started an agency, and we started building websites for clients, and we ran that for 3 years. And it was a huge learning curve because, we had to hire contractors, and we had to manage clients, and we had to manage projects, and we had to work out all sorts of stuff that neither of us really knew what we were doing. We had to all just kind of figure it out as we went. And then what happened is after 3 years, I kind of realized that, I was in business with the wrong person. No one's fault. We just kind of ended up in business together by accident, and we're just a bad fit. And we can talk more about that later if you like. And also I just kind of realized that I didn't want to do client services for much longer because there's a bit of a ceiling on consulting work. Like you're effectively trading time for money.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard to scale that, man, and it just wears you down in the end, and you're just constantly reacting to client demands, and that can be a little bit tiring and exhausting. So I eventually transitioned out of that into the online education space, which is where we are now.
And so what was the first kind of thing you started to do in the online education space, and how did that morph into what you're doing now?
So the first thing I ever sold online was a WordPress plugin, and because we were building WordPress websites, when you hand over a website to a client, you then need to teach them how to use WordPress. And that was the first problem I wanted to solve. So we built a plugin called Video User Manuals, which puts a bunch of video tutorials in your client's WordPress dashboard, which teaches them how to use WordPress so you don't have to.
Oh.
Right? And we're like, hey, this is a good idea. Why don't we try and sell this to other WordPress developers? So we put that up online. We started selling it. There's an interesting story how we split test our pricing. So we put it up online on this sales page, and we thought, we're not really sure what people are going to pay for this. So we put up 5 versions of the page, and we split test, and we put up a version for $9 a month, $19, $29, $39, and $49. We had more people sign up at $49 a month than any other price point. And so then we stupidly decided to launch at $24 a month.
What?
Because Basecamp was $24 a month and everything else that we were using was $24 a month. So we just thought $24 a month was the right price. We'd scientifically validated that people were prepared to pay $49 a month, and then just shot ourselves in the foot and went out at $24 a month. And we were still $24 a month 8 years later. We've never put the price up. So there you go. I think there's something in that for everyone.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I remember the first night I woke up. I remember the first night we sold one of those plugins. I woke up the next morning, and there was a message on my phone from PayPal that someone had paid $24 while I was asleep, and it blew my mind. I was like, right. That was the moment I saw the light, man. I was like, you can make something once and sell it multiple times on the internet without having to talk to a customer. This is gold. This, for me, was the holy grail, because I could actually see now that you can actually make money while you're on the beach. Wow. Because up until that point, for me, that had been a fallacy. That was like, that's not going to happen. That's just a crock. Anyone who's on the internet saying that they're making money while they're on the beach is just full of it. But this was the first time that I'd actually seen it happen for myself. So that plugin we built, a good little audience around that over a period of 3 or 4 years, just part-time, right? So we were still doing our consulting work, doing client services. We built this plugin. It got to the point where the plugin was doing about 120 grand a year. and it wasn't enough to sustain me and my. I had a separate business partner in the plugin business. That wasn't enough to sustain us full time, but it was enough to go, we're spending like 3 hours a week on this thing, and it's doing 120 grand a year. What would happen if we focused on this full time? And so in 2012, I decided to shut down my agency and focus full time on serving WordPress developers and building products for WordPress developers. And so what I did is here's an interesting tactic. If you've got any kind of audience, just survey them and ask them what they want. I just sent an email to our list and said, hey, what do you guys want? Like, why did you sign up for we had a bunch of free ebooks we were giving away. Why did you sign up for our ebooks? How can we help you? What's the challenge in your business? And we emailed, our entire list at that point was 8,500 email addresses, and I had 451 responses into my inbox. And I read every single one of them, and they were all saying the same thing, man. We need better clients, and we need clients to pay us better fees for our work because we're just not profitable. We just can't sustain ourselves. So I started putting together a course to teach WordPress freelancers how to run a proper consulting business. And that's probably 80% of our revenue now is this program we've got called WP Elevation, which is a professional business course for WordPress freelancers.
Interesting. So tell me how you generate revenue right now today.
Yep. So we have a course that opens 3 times a year called WP Elevation. It opens in October, February, and June, and it opens for a week at a time. And during those week-long enrollments, we enroll anywhere between 150 and 220 students into the course. Up until recently, the price of that course has been $997 to enroll. We're actually putting the price up in October to $1,497, which I can talk a little bit about. The reason we're doing that is because we want to, the whole quality of our course and our training and the conversation that happens in our community. We've got over 500 members in our program at the moment. The quality of the conversation that's happened in that program has just lifted so much in the last 2 years when we've been really doubling down on the value that we provide and the kind of freelancers that we attract. And so we don't want to attract people that just come in, kick the tires for 3 weeks and then bounce out because it's not what they're looking for. We only want to attract serious people who are seriously building a business as a WordPress consultant. That's why we're putting the price up to that price point to kind of, try and weed out the people who aren't serious about it, if I can say that respectfully. Yeah. And so then what happens is after they enroll in the course, they're in our program for 12 months. And then after 12 months, their membership renews at $97 a month. And at the moment, we're working on about a 50% retention rate. So if we get 200 people enroll in the course, after the 12 months, about 50% of them will stay in and 50% will move on, mainly because they've either got what they needed or they've decided to switch their focus and do something else.
Okay, and so is the course itself a 12-month course?
The course itself is a 6-week course. Okay. And so what happens is during that 6 weeks, every week there's a new module released. And then when you complete that module, there are other bonuses released. So we're big on gamification. We're huge on gamification because we've bought just about every online course there is. And one of the things that we've learned over the last 5 or 6 years as we've been doubling down on this is that most online courses promise lots, and the actual learning experience isn't great once you log in. It's basically just a bunch of, protected pages behind a membership plugin. Right. And as a result of that, student completion rates of online courses are just somewhere between 5 and 10% if you're lucky. And we think that's a terrible experience. I mean, if you went to a private college and you said to the CEO, how many of your students are completing the course? And he said, 15%, I reckon he'd get fired pretty quickly. So we've managed to get 65% completion rates in our course because we use mad gamification and badges and certificates, and we use lots of carrots to encourage people to get through the course. And so every week as they go through the course, they unlock new bonuses as they work their way through it. And then at the end of 6 weeks, they complete an exam, which is just pretty light-hearted, fun, multiple-choice exam, and then they unlock their certificate. And we're not a registered training organisation, but we give them a certificate of completion. We don't promise that it's anything that it's not. It's just a bit of fun, really. We give them a certificate of completion, and they take photos of that, and they put it in our Facebook group, and it's a mad feeling, man, at the end of every 6-week cohort when all these people are putting their photos of them and their certificate in the Facebook group. It's just nuts. It just feels...
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, it feels amazing, man. It's a really good feeling. So that's how we make revenue. That's how we make the bulk of our revenue now. Is we do 3 launches a year, and then we have our recurring memberships in between those launches to sort of pad us out. And so we spend money in between launches, but then we make money every launch, which keeps us topped up and keeps us profitable.
And so, really quick, what makes them stay on in that auto pay system?
So, good question. A lot of it is the community. We've got over 500 members in our private Facebook group. It's a really highly engaged Facebook group. We also, the community is just mad because most of these guys and girls are freelancers. They work from home and they feel isolated, and they want to know that they're not. They kind of want to know that they're not the only one doing this. They kind of think I'm the only person that's ever started a WordPress freelance business from a bedroom. And when they enroll in our program and they realize there are 500 other people doing the same thing, they're like, oh wow, I feel like I found my tribe. So that's what keeps them in more than anything is those friendships and those connections. But we also roll out a webinar, 2 coaching calls, and a mini course every month. So we have 4 coaches, including myself, that produce that content every month, and it might be around, you need to hire your first VA, or you need to hire a developer, or you need to take a design brief from a client. Whatever our members tell us they want to learn, we'll go on and build courses for them and run webinars with guests and do coaching calls to get their questions answered.
I see. How long did it take you to come up with the course and the whole system?
Well, this is an interesting story because this is the way to kind of hack a product together, right? So after the email that I sent to everyone and they all come back and said, we need, better clients. I said, right. I've just been studying the whole lean startup thing and the whole lean startup methodology, which is like, try and build something that people want to buy rather than go and build something and then try and sell it. Mm-hmm. So I said to my business partner, let's try and sell tickets to a webinar and see if let's validate the idea that this group of people will pay us for business coaching. And the easiest way to do that is to run a webinar and sell tickets to it. So we set up a sales page on Unbounce, connected it to GoToWebinar and Eventbrite to sell the tickets, and put up this really dodgy looking sales page on Unbounce that basically said, attention WordPress consultants, attract better clients, better projects, and better fees. And then I made a little video saying, hey, this is who I am. I can teach you how to do this stuff. But I only want to work with people who are serious. So we're charging money for this webinar. And the webinar was valued at $197, but we sold early bird tickets for $97. And I said to my business partner, by the way, I hadn't opened Keynote yet and I had not built one slide, right? So I said to my business partner, the worst case scenario here is that we sell 5 tickets because then I just have to give them a refund and pretend it never happened. But if we sell 10, I'll turn up and I'll do the webinar and I'll make it awesome. But my secret hope was that I'd sell 30. We sold out of our 50 early bird tickets in 24 hours. We ended up selling round 2 tickets at $127, and then we sold some round 3 tickets at $197. You tell me anyone who sells webinar tickets for $197. All webinars, this was in 2013. All webinars now are free, and everyone knows they're a pitch fest, right? So we did 11.5 grand in 48 hours, and then I said, okay, I've got to go build a webinar and I better make it awesome. And it was 2 hours long, and I taught everything I knew about running a WordPress consulting business. And then after the webinar, I interviewed them all again, surveyed them, got them on Skype, said, what do you want to do next? And they all told me that was freaking amazing. You have to do this every month. We want webinars. We want to connect with each other. We want you to build a members website and we will pay you for it. And I said, awesome. And I had 5 people verbally commit over the phone to paying me somewhere between $1,200 and $1,500 a year to belong to this membership. I said, okay, I'm going to go build it, and in 2 weeks' time, I'm coming back and I'm going to ask you for your order. So I went and built the members website, made a sales video, cut up that original webinar that I ran into 6 sections, and that was the only content in there to begin with. And then I sent an email out and we launched it over a weekend, and we got 55 people to sign up in the first 4 days. And then we shut the doors. So we used scarcity. Yep. And that was our first launch, and it was $97 a month at that point. And so we'd just done 5.5 grand in recurring revenue added to the business every month. And I said, okay, right, we're onto something here. This is it. We've just proven this. We've validated the idea. And that was just over 3 years ago. And so then I basically built the course based around what they wanted. When they first logged in, I said, got them on a coaching call and went, right, what do you guys want to learn first? And they all told me what they wanted to learn. And then I went and built training for them.
What a phenomenal story, man. I feel like there's so many great kind of nuggets of gold nuggets there to take. Yeah. Thanks for sharing all that.
Pleasure, man.
I want to keep moving on to, as an entrepreneur, it's like a roller coaster. You got the times you got to celebrate, and the times when things get tough. And so for you, Troy, what would you consider to be your worst entrepreneurial moment?
We, at the start of 2015, we I wanted to launch like a high-end mastermind group, and I figured we'd get 10 of our members in a high-end mastermind for 10 grand a year. That would just add 100 grand revenue to the business, and we'd employ someone part-time to run all the admin side of that. And then we'd just have 4 events a year where we'd actually meet up in real life. And I didn't really think this through. And I got to admit now, my intention was to add revenue to the business. And that's never the right intention. And so what happened is I just sent an email, made a little video, sent an email out to our people. And after 3 weeks, we'd sold 1 ticket to this mastermind. And after 3 weeks, I had to admit that it just wasn't going to work. So I rang Patrick, the guy that actually bought the ticket, who's still one of our closest, best customers and is now actually part of our live event program. I rang him and I said, dude, I just couldn't get the numbers, man. I got to refund your money because it's not going to happen. And he was really bummed out. And I said, look, I'm going to give you a private one-on-one coaching call. In fact, come into my office. In fact, come around and I'll buy you lunch and we'll go out and we'll have a chat. And, I'll explain everything and I'll help you in any part of your business to apologize. And he was really appreciative of that. And the lesson that I learned was my intention was not to add massive value to my customers. My intention was to add revenue to the business. And that's the last time I've ever done that. And because what I've learned over the years is that there is a direct correlation between how much you help people and how much money you make. It is absolutely connected. And so my intention now with everything we do is to add value to our customers. And you can't lose, because even if you don't make the revenue that you expected, you're making fans for life. You're building this community of people who just love you because you're super helpful.
Good word, man. And on the flip side of that, what's more of a light bulb, an aha moment of your entrepreneurial experience? Tell us that story.
Yeah, recently I was in New York and we ran a live event and we had 32 people come along in Soho, and I got there at 8 o'clock in the morning to set up. It was this beautiful room, big windows, lots of natural light, looking over Manhattan, and these people started to filter into the room. People that I know so well online, people that feel like they know me because they've watched me on hundreds of videos, and people walking in and meeting me for the first time and being a little bit kind of weirded out because they realize that I'm 3-dimensional and I have legs. I'm not just a Twitter avatar, and. By the time I finished setting up, I kind of looked around and all of a sudden there were 30 people in this room who were like my closest customers and people that I consider my online friends. And I just felt completely overwhelmed, and this just amazing wash of joy came over me that, wow, we're all actually here in the same room. And we had an amazing day, like a full day live mastermind. It was just mind blowing. And then we went out for dinner that night and had drinks. And it was just a complete validation of everything that we've been doing over the last 3 years to hang out with these people in real life. We get to do that a little bit more here in Australia because we can. But to do that with the Americans was just an awesome experience.
Oh, what an awesome story, man.
Yeah.
And I got this question for you. I love to ask this. If you could time travel back to day one of your entrepreneurial journey and have 10 minutes with your former self to communicate any lessons you've acquired with the intention of saving yourself mistakes and heartache, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, you know what? That's really easy, because when I first started this journey of being an online entrepreneur, my focus, and we talked about this a minute ago, intention, my focus was making money, right?
Yeah.
My focus was, how can I make money on the internet? And Zig Ziglar famously said, you can have anything you want in life as long as you help others get what they want. And it sounds a bit woo-woo, right? And when you're starting out and you're scrapping around and you're trying to find your first dollar and you're trying to prove something works and you're trying to make some sales, you don't want to hear this woo-woo mindset stuff. But I'm telling you, 100%, if you focus, I would tell myself, dude, don't worry about making money. Find a way to pay the bills. This is what nobody talks about. The problem with the entrepreneurial journey is you've got to get through what Seth Godin calls the dip, right? You've got to eat while you're proving your business. And so find a way to pay the bills, because financial pressure is the worst kind. So do whatever you have to do. Take a part-time job at Starbucks, whatever you have to do to pay the bills, keep your head above water. And then with your online entrepreneurial venture, focus 100% on how you can help your customers more than anyone else. Because if you do that, you will make money by default. The money will come guaranteed. But do not focus on making money because people can smell that a mile off.
What's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
Reading. Lots. Yeah.
And on that same note, what's a business book that you'd recommend to us and why?
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill is the number one book that changed everything for me.
That's a great one. And that link to that will be in the show notes, guys.
Yep.
Troy, what's a quality or a kind of a personality trait that you have that you would consider essential to being an entrepreneur?
I know this because one of my best friends tells this about me all the time. He says that I'm extremely resourceful and I'm a great self-learner, and I'm extremely stubborn at working problems out, and I'm very good at learning new things, and I think that's really important to be super resourceful as an entrepreneur because you've got to solve lots of problems and you've got to do it on your own.
Yeah. What's an internet resource like Evernote that you would recommend to us?
Internet resources. I got a love-hate relationship with just about every tool on the market. Probably Slack. I mean, Slack has just changed my productivity, changed the way we communicate as a team. In fact, I'm working towards not having an email address and just doing everything through Slack. So, yeah, Slack has been the game changer for me for sure.
Awesome, Troy. And these last two questions that I have for you, they kind of speak to both the two kinds of people that listen to this show. So the first one is, what's some parting advice that you'd have for any of our listeners who are thinking of dropping out and possibly dropping out to become an entrepreneur or to build their business, keep building their business, but they haven't quite made that step yet? What advice would you have for them?
So, don't be fooled by the glamour and the glitz of the entrepreneurial world because it is like a moth to the flame. There are lots of... It's hard work, man. It's extremely hard work building your own business. There's no roadmap and there's no one to tell you what to do. And that's the scariest thing about it is you gotta figure it out yourself, right? So don't be fooled by the glamour and the glitz. Make an educated decision. And if you are gonna drop out of university to become an entrepreneur, make sure you are doing it for the right reasons, and make sure you're not just doing it because you want to have the glitzy lifestyle that you see all over the internet. Because most of that is just, I don't know if this is a G-rated show, but most of it's not right? There's a lot of woo-woo and snake oil on the internet, so just be careful about that. But also, make sure you're doing it for something that you're really passionate about, because being an entrepreneur takes a lot of hard work. And so if you have to be really passionate about what you're doing and really believe in it, that's the only thing that will drive you to overcome those hurdles and to keep going until you succeed, because it's a lot of hard work. That would be the advice I would give.
What advice do you have for any of our listeners who've already dropped out and who are already on their entrepreneurial journey?
My advice would be, and again, this is kind of mindset stuff, but my advice would be talk to customers and talk to people as much as you possibly can. As much as an entrepreneur, you have to do things yourself. You're not alone. There are many people who have been there before you and already solved lots of these problems. So don't be afraid to put your hand up and say, I don't know. One of my friends is a guy named Nathan Chan who runs a podcast called Founder and runs a magazine called Founder. He's one of the most humble guys I know, because if we're having he works in the same building as me, and if we're having a conversation about something and I'm explaining something to him he doesn't understand, he'll just say, oh, sorry, bro, I don't know what you're talking about. And, sometimes people are too proud to admit that they don't know something and that they ask for help.
Right.
He is the most humble guy, and it serves him so well because people are so willing to help because he's just so willing to ask questions. So surround yourself with people who know what they're doing, and talk to customers and talk to mentors and talk to colleagues as much as you possibly can. You don't have to have all the answers.
What's the best way that people can connect with you?
Twitter at Troy Dean is probably a good place, and troydean.com.au is my own personal, very inconsistent blog, and rockstarempires.com is a new venture that we've just launched, which is all about selling and creating courses online, and we're starting to put up some good stuff on the blog over there. It's brand new, so I'd love to hear what challenges people have got with creating online courses, and we'll go and make some content for them.
Fantastic. Well, Successful Dropouts, you've been hanging out with Troy and Kylan today, learning what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. For everything we talked about today, head over to successfuldropout.com and type Troy into the search bar, and the show notes will pop right up. And as always, stay hungry, stay foolish.